All right, you bastards, strap yourselves in. We're diving headfirst into the Tour de France. Yeah, that insane bike race where grown men just destroy their bodies for like weeks straight.
Weeks, try months, man.
Right, we're going to rip the Band-Aid off its history, all the drama, all the doping bullshit that's plagued it forever.
Oh, it's a wild ride for sure.
We've got a shitload of sources, old newspapers, biographies, some recent exposés. We'll try to figure out how this thing even started, how it turned into the spectacle it is now.
It all started with a newspaper, believe it or not.
So you're saying the Tour de France, this whole grueling race, was just a publicity stunt?
Basically, yeah. Picture France in 1903, still reeling from the Dreyfus affair.
That whole political scandal thing, right?
Exactly. And in this climate, we've got two newspapers, L'Ado and L'Avello. They hated each other.
Rivals.
Big time. L'Ado was struggling. They needed to steal readers fast.
So they cooked up this insane bike race around the whole country.
Bingo. The owner of L'Ado, this guy Jules Albert de Dion, he hated L'Avello. He was like, fuck it, let's launch this crazy race and steal their readers.
Wait, hold up. Whose idea was it to make these guys cycle around all of France?
That would be Gilles Lefebvre, a young journalist at L'Ado. He pitched a 6-day race, figured it would sell papers.
6 days, and now it's 3 weeks of agony? What the hell were the early tours actually like?
Brutal. Multi-day stages, sometimes riding through the night, no fancy gear, no helmets.
Sounds like a recipe for disaster. And speaking of disasters, we got to talk doping. It's like trying to talk about the ocean without mentioning the water.
You can't ignore it. Doping's been part of the tour almost since the beginning. No regulations back then. Riders would take anything. Wine, cocaine, even strychnine, rat poison.
These guys were hardcore.
You said it. One of the most tragic stories is Tom Simpson's death in '67. Legendary rider, but he pushed himself too far. Heat, amphetamines, took him out on Mont Ventoux.
Fuck. That's dark. These guys really pushed their bodies to the limit.
And it didn't get much better. The Festina affair in '98 exposed just how deep this doping shit went. Systematic doping, teams fleeing the race.
The Tour of Shame, right?
Exactly. And then, of course, Lance Armstrong. 7 titles, all built on lies and drugs. What a con man.
The audacity.
Like a magic show, but the magic was EPO and blood transfusions.
And he wasn't alone. After Festina, they retested samples from '98. A shit ton of riders were on EPO. Makes you wonder if anyone was clean. It sounds like doping was as common as getting a flat tire. But how did the race even work back then? Was it always teams, or were they lone wolves?
It's changed a lot. The first tours, it was every man for himself. Then in 1930, they switched to national teams.
National pride must have been intense.
Oh, absolutely. But it was messy. Riders would sabotage each other. So in '62, they went back to trade teams, what we see today.
Lone wolves to national heroes to sponsored athletes. Capitalism on 2 wheels.
Pretty much. But the scoring changed, too. It started with just time. First across the finish line, boom, you win. But then they introduced a point system.
To make it more exciting.
Supposedly. Points for stage wins, high finishes, all that. But it got too complex, didn't always show the best rider, so they went back to mostly time, like today.
So we've got this race, born from a publicity stunt, went through all these crazy formats. Sounds like they were making it up as they went along.
Kinda, yeah. But despite all that, the Tour de France became this iconic sporting event.
All right, so we've got the origin story. The early years of crazy endurance, the unregulated doping chaos, teams, scoring systems. We've dipped our toes into the doping. We'll go deeper into that later. But for now, let's take a break. Come back for the juicier stuff.
All right, so back to the doping shitstorm. It's unbelievable how much they tried to just sweep it under the rug for years.
Right. It's like, how could they not be suspicious when these guys are riding hundreds of kilometers a day? Up mountains, barely breaking a sweat.
You'd think it would be obvious, but they were happy to celebrate these like superhuman performances and not ask too many questions.
It's like they thought if they didn't talk about it, it wouldn't exist.
Yeah, kind of like an ostrich with his head in the sand. But then Lance Armstrong came along and really blew the whole damn thing wide open. 7 Tour de France titles, all based on lies and performance-enhancing drugs.
What a fucking con man.
It's mind-blowing how he managed to pull it off for so long.
Oh, he was good. He played the media, the public, exploited the hell out of his cancer survivor image.
It's wild to think how many people he fooled.
But eventually the truth came out. The evidence was just too much to ignore, and his whole empire crumbled.
Good riddance. But even after all that, it seems like doping is still a problem.
It's a constant battle. They come up with new tests, the cheaters find new ways to beat them. It's a cat and mouse game.
And the stakes are so high. Millions of dollars, sponsorships, fame.
Exactly. It's hard to resist that kind of temptation.
Yeah.
It's going to be frustrating for the riders who are competing clean.
Yeah. Knowing that they're up against guys who are basically cheating their asses off, it's not exactly a level playing field. Definitely not. It takes away from the integrity of the sport. But hey, let's not focus only on the negative stuff. The Tour de France isn't all about doping and scandals.
Right? True. There's also the spectacle of it all. The sheer athleticism. These guys are pushing themselves to the absolute limit.
Absolutely. They're riding for hours on end, day after day, through all kinds of weather, scorching heat, torrential rain, you name it. And let's not forget about those treacherous mountain passes.
Yeah, and they're doing all of that while balancing on two wheels and dodging potholes and crazy fans. Talk about a high-stress job.
It's insane. And the scenery? The tour takes them through some of the most beautiful parts of France, vineyards, mountains, picturesque villages. It's like a 3-week-long travelogue.
Speaking of visuals, what's with all the colorful jerseys? It's like a rainbow explosion on the road.
Oh, the jerseys. They each represent a different achievement in the race. You've got the famous yellow jersey worn by the overall leader, the guy with the fastest total time.
Makes sense. And the polka dot one, what's that about?
Ugh, the polka dot jersey. That's for the king of the mountains, the best climber. The one who conquers those insane ascents.
Okay, and what about green? Looks kind of like something you'd wear to a 70s disco party.
That's for the best sprinter? The fastest guy in the bunch sprints. They can reach crazy speeds, over 60 kilometers an hour.
Damn, that's faster than my car on the freeway. And I think I've seen a white jersey, too.
Right. The white jersey is for the best young rider, top rider under 26 years old. It's like the Rookie of the Year award.
Cool. So yellow for the overall champ, polka dots for the mountain goat, green for the speed demon, and white for the young gun. Got it.
But what about the guys at the back of the pack? Do they get any recognition?
They do, actually. The last place rider gets a special title. It's called the Lantern Rouge.
Lantern Rouge. Sounds kind of fancy. Is that some kind of prestigious award?
Not really. It translates to Red Lantern, referring to the lantern that used to hang on the back of the last train car.
Oh, I see. So even if you come in last, you can still be a legend in your own right. Exactly. The Lantern Rouge often becomes a fan favorite. They represent perseverance, that never give up attitude.
I love it. So even the guy who finishes last gets some glory. What about the fans? What's up with that crazy publicity caravan that rolls through before the race? It's like a mobile circus.
It's wild, right? A huge parade of floats, vehicles, performers showering the crowds with millions of freebies.
They just throw stuff at people. Like what kind of stuff?
Everything. Keychains, hats, candy, you name it. It's a marketing frenzy, but it adds to the whole atmosphere.
Sounds like a good time. Okay, let's get to some of the crazy facts and figures about the tour. Hit me with the mind-blowing stuff.
All right, first up, most Tour de France wins. It's a 4-way tie. Jacques Anquetil, Eddy Merckx, Bernard Hinault, and Miguel Indurain, they all have 5 titles each.
5 wins each. Those are some serious bragging rights.
And get this, the closest finish in Tour history was decided by just 8 seconds.
8 seconds after 3 weeks of racing? It's going to be heartbreaking.
It was. Back in 1989, Greg LeMond beat Laurent Fignon in the final time trial by just 8 seconds. Can you imagine?
I'd be devastated. Okay, what about the highest altitude? These guys must be riding in thin air up there.
The highest point ever reached was the Col du Galibier, at a crazy 2,645 meters above sea level.
Jeez. I can barely breathe walking up a flight of stairs.
Oh.
These guys are superhuman. Okay, tell me about some epic breakaways in Tour history. Those solo rides where a rider just takes off and dares everyone to catch him.
Oh, there are some legendary ones, like Albert Berland's insane ride in 1947. He rode 253 kilometers completely alone, broke away from the pack, and just kept going.
And 253 kilometers solo. Unbelievable. With all the doping scandals, the pressure, how does this thing even survive? It's like a cockroach. You can't kill it.
Right. The Tour has definitely had its share of controversies, but they've stepped up the testing, introduced the biological passport that tracks an athlete's biological markers over time to look for any suspicious changes.
Seems like they're finally getting serious about cleaning things up. But the stakes are still incredibly high. Millions of dollars on the line. The temptation to cheat must be massive.
For sure.
But there are plenty of riders who choose to compete clean, pushing their bodies to the limit without taking shortcuts.
Respect to those guys. All right, let's talk about the politics of the Tour. It's not just about cycling, right?
Definitely not. It's been used to promote national pride, showcase different regions of France, even to make political statements.
It's like a cultural phenomena.
Yeah.
With a whole lot of baggage.
You got it. It reflects so much more than just the sport itself. Societal values, political tensions, even advancements in cycling technology. It's a reflection of the world we live in.
Okay, big question. What's the future of the Tour? Will it ever be completely clean?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? The sport's making progress, but there will always be that temptation to push the boundaries. This technology is improving, but so are the ways to cheat. It's a constant back and forth.
So basically the drama never ends. There's always a
Yeah.
new scandal waiting to happen.
It's like a soap opera on wheels. But despite all its flaws, the Tour de France continues to fascinate people all over the world. It's a testament to the human spirit, the drive to push beyond our limits, and the appeal of a spectacle that's truly unique.
Okay, before we wrap this whole thing up, I gotta ask.
Yeah.
What are some of the craziest Tour de France moments that just made your jaw drop? Something that just screams, this shit is bananas.
Oh man, there are so many. Where do I even begin? It's like the Tour is a bottomless pit of insane stories. Like, remember that time when a rider's handlebars snapped during a mountain descent?
No way. What happened?
He rode the rest of the stage with one hand on the bars, basically steering with his balls.
Holy shit. That's nuts. These guys are hardcore.
And then there was that time a rider got attacked by a spectator's dog during a stage. Ended up with some nasty bites, but he kept going like a champ.
Damn, even Tujo couldn't stop these guys. They're animals.
You know, even with all the advancements in technology and training and everything, the Tour is still unpredictable. You never know what's going to happen. A crash, a mechanical, the weather changes. It's insane.
Yeah, it's like a real-life action movie with way more lycra. But with all the controversies and the ethical stuff, do you think the Tour is even worth watching?
That's a tough one. There's no denying the dark side of the sport. All the pressure to win leads to bad decisions, but at the same time, there's something about the Tour that's just captivating. The drama, the athleticism, seeing these guys race through the French countryside. It's a roller coaster for sure.
So what's the takeaway here? Should we be cheering for these guys, or is it all just a corrupt shit show?
It's up to each individual to decide, really. There's no easy answer. But one thing's for sure, the Tour de France is more than just a bike race. It's a cultural phenomenon. Makes us think about the dark side of sports, about ambition and human nature. And that's worth something.
Deep, man. Deep.
Yeah.
So for all you listeners out there, next time you see a bunch of dudes in spandex racing across your screens, remember there's a whole lot more going on than meets the eye. History, drama, scandal, it's all part of the Tour's story.
Well said.
All right, that's it for today's deep dive into the Tour de France. Thanks for tuning in, you crazy bastards. We'll catch you next time for another wild ride into something totally fucked up.